So welcome back to our first module on catalyzation and the role that it's playing in cracking the leisure code. Catalyzation is our megatrend that's all about this desire for consumers to really improve themselves and become their best selves. The driver that we're talking about here is of course one of betterment. And what's getting in consumers' way when it comes to their betterment these days? Well, 66% of Americans say that they feel stressed about the future of the nation. And in the US, rates of reported anger are at their highest levels since 2006. So how does the modern consumer cope with all of this stress? Well, something that we've seen on the rise for the last couple of years is this phenomenon known as self-care. This has popped up in the marketplace in terms of the things that people are prioritizing in their lives, and it's really just growing and growing. Back in 2017, Gia Tolentino wrote a really important and relevant piece related to self-care titled "The Year That Skincare Became a Coping Mechanism." In that article, she writes, "Traditionally, skincare was an attempt to deny the inevitability of the future. Now, it's part of a dream that there is a future to look forward to." See, the thinking on part of consumers is if I can't make the world better, well, maybe I can at least make myself better. And if I'm going to make the world better and put in the work to do so, then I really need to take care of myself. This may help explain why self-improvement has ballooned into an almost $10 billion industry in the US and is expected to keep growing. Indeed, self-improvement is showing up in all sorts of places that we may never have suspected before. For instance, Netflix started carrying Brené Brown's Call to Courage keynote this year. But no industry has perhaps been more impacted by this desire for self-improvement than the alcohol industry. And I say that because the number of drinkers worldwide is decreasing, and that's actually specifically and especially true among teens and young adults. Now, I know what you're likely thinking explains this phenomenon, that young people are turning to legal marijuana these days instead of drinking. And while that's certainly part of the puzzle, it doesn't explain everything that we see happening here. Another more important shift is something that's known as sober curiosity. This is a more casual lean into sobriety that's not necessarily inspired by hitting rock bottom or having serious addiction issues. Ruby Warrington, who literally wrote the book on this subject, says, "For many of us, getting sober curious begins with a simple question: would my life be better without alcohol? And for many people, that answer is yes. And for many people, the answer is just that it would be better with a little less alcohol." Now, there are many shades of gray and interpretations when it comes to sobriety these days. And one of my favorite definitions, something that's actually known as being California sober. This is when you abstain from alcohol and hard drugs, but still partake in things like marijuana or psychedelics. So within the alcohol industry itself, one of the ways that we see this playing out is this demand for low alcohol beverages like low ABV brew, this insight here. But a more dramatic shift that we see is entire bars like the ones in Booze Free Bar that completely take alcohol out of the equation. The most successful booze-free bar that we've seen so far is one known as Getaway Bar in Brooklyn. And they have the same world-class experience that you would expect from any bar, any cocktail bar these days. But like I said, they completely take alcohol off of the menu. Another space in another industry where we see consumers getting their social needs met without sacrificing their health is in boutique fitness classes. This includes places like Grit in New York City, which is a boxing gym that actually has a full-service bar in the front and the flashing lights and the kind of excitement that you would expect from a nightclub. Now, beyond workout classes and the alcohol industry itself, another industry that's been tremendously impacted by self-improvement is actually the travel industry. And we see that through insights like transformative travel, where the idea is that consumers want to come out of a travel experience being a better and improved version of themselves. 54% of travelers have actually said that transformation is an important aspect of travel for them. And this has led to an uptick in solo travel as well, especially among women. Aditi Chakran of Vox speaks to this phenomenon and its impact on spending by saying that the stampede of globetrotting women see travel as an investment in themselves, not simply a sightseeing opportunity. And when you view a trip as a sort of therapy, well, it's much easier to buy a ticket. This is showing up in the actual industry in many ways. We see an uptick in things like, self-improvement retreats. But one of my favorite examples is this Peruvian retreat called the Fifth Dimension, where they actually build an ayahuasca experience straight into that upfront cost. When it comes to the future of catalyzation, keep these two things in mind. Think less about solutions and more about the enrichment of your customer. And secondly, re-envision and support the ways in which consumers can become their best selves. So that wraps up our module on catalyzation. Here are some questions for you to consider. What are some ways that you can make interactions with your brand more meaningful? And how could your brand be more directly involved in helping consumers feel fulfilled?